Hello Oscar, Grandpa here. Hope you're well and having fun and a lovely time with Mummy and Daddy and your little sister, and that all is going well with school. It's I love, by the way, seeing you. Well, two good things, really impressive things this week. Seeing first you were telling us all about the chords on the guitar and the various strings. That was absolutely fantastic. Good luck with that. I think you'll be great playing the guitar. It's a lovely instrument. And secondly, seeing you doing some skating, I thought that was really good too, because you're concentrating so hard. And as Mum said, you'll be gliding across the ice. So it's lots of love from me and your friend Moosey. You all right, Moosey? Yeah, Moosey's fine. Moosey's fine. And from Granny too, and from Auntie Anna, and everybody here. So I thought we would start reading today with Mr. Funny. So let's see. Mr. Funny lived in a teapot. Do you know what a teapot? Yeah, I'm sure you know what a teapot is. You put your tea leaves in, or tea bag, and hot water, and it makes tea. Mr. Funny lived in a teapot. It had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room, and it suited Mr. Funny very nicely. So there it is again. Look, it's made a house out of a teapot. Whoa. One day Mr. Funny was having lunch. He wasn't very hungry, so he only had a daisy sandwich and a glass of toast. Isn't that funny? Delicious, he murmured to himself as he finished his funny lunch. There he is, inside, having his funny lunch. After lunch, Mr. Funny decided to go for a drive in his car. There we are. Mr. Funny's car was a shoe. Did you see that, Oscar? I didn't realise that. Look, it's a shoe. Have you ever seen a car that looks like a shoe? Don't think we have we? It looks very funny. As he drove along, everybody who saw him laughed to see such a funny sight. He passed a worm at the side of the road. There's the worm, laughing. The worm thought Mr. Funny and his funny car was the funniest thing he had ever seen. He nearly laughed himself in two. He passed a pig in the field. The pig thought Mr. Funny and his funny car was the funniest thing that she had ever seen. The pig's laughing. She nearly laughed her tail off. Oh dear. Even the flowers he passed thought that Mr. Funny was the funniest thing that they had ever seen. They nearly laughed themselves out of the ground. Oh, the flowers are laughing. That's silly, isn't it, really? Eventually, Mr. Funny came to some crossroads. He didn't know which way to go, so he looked at the signpost. The crossroads, Oscar, as you know, is where 2 roads meet, and they have signposts to show where they're going. So look, here's Mr. Funny, and he's arrived at the crossroads, and the signs are pointing various ways. So one says this way, one says to the zoo, one says that way, and one says another way. So there's 4 different signposts there. One of the signs said, "To the zoo." Wow. That will be fun, thought Mr. Funny to himself, so he drove his shoe towards the zoo. When he arrived at the gate of the zoo, he stopped. It was closed. "I'm sorry," said the zookeeper. Look, there's the zookeeper saying sorry. "I'm sorry," said the zookeeper. "We've had to close the zoo because all the animals have a cold, and they're all feeling very sorry for themselves." Oh, Oscar, that sounds horrible, doesn't it? "Oh dear," said Mr. Funny, and then he thought, "Perhaps I can help to cheer them up," he said. "Well," said the zookeeper, "it's worth a try," and he opened the gate. Mr. Funny drove into the zoo in his shoe. The first thing he saw was an elephant. There's the elephant, looking very sad. Have another look. Look, looking very sad. The elephant was feeling very sorry for herself, very sorry indeed. Mr. Funny stood and looked at the sad-looking elephant, and the sad-looking elephant stood and looked at Mr. Funny. Oh dear. Then do you know what Mr. Funny did? He pulled a funny face. Wow, that is really a funny face. Can you do funny face, Oscar? I'm sure it's pretty good, yeah. Absolutely good. Mr. Funny, as you'd imagine, is very good at pulling funny faces. The elephant giggled. She'd never seen anything so funny. Mr. Funny pulled another funny face. The elephant burst out laughing. The elephant laughed and laughed and laughed. Look, there's the elephant laughing her head off. She laughed so hard she nearly laughed her trunk off, and she felt a lot better. Mr. Funny went over to the lion house. Ooh, Oscar, what's going to happen there? There was a lion feeling extraordinarily sorry for himself. Look, that looks like a really grumpy lion, doesn't it? Can you do a grumpy face like that? I don't think you're really very grumpy. You're a very happy person, like you're not a grumpy person. Mr. Funny stood and looked at the sad-looking lion. And the sad-looking lion stood and looked at Mr. Funny. Very sad, isn't it? Oh dear. And then Mr. Funny pulled the funniest looking face that probably ever been pulled anywhere. Ever. Well, you've heard a lion roar before, haven't you? You've heard a lion roar, haven't you, Oscar? Well, this lion roared too, with laughter. That's Mr. Funny's funny face, and the lion's roaring his head off with laughter. He laughed so hard, he nearly laughed his whiskers to pieces. Then Mr. Funny went round to see all the other animals in the zoo. Oh dear, what a miserable looking lot. For all of them Mr. Funny pulled funnier and funnier faces. The big brown bear giggled and then burst out laughing. Whoa! Look at that bear laughing. Mr. Funny had to go down to the wildlife park, won't he, Oscar, and make funny faces at the bears there. And the giraffe laughed so hard, she nearly laughed her neck into a knot. There's the giraffe. And the hippopotamus nearly laughed himself out of his skin. And the penguins nearly laughed their flippers floppy. And the leopard, well, you really should have seen him. He laughed so hard, he nearly laughed his spots off. What a pandemonium. Oh, Mr. Funny, giggled the zookeeper, who had started laughing as well. Oh, Mr. Funny, thank you very, very much indeed for coming to cheer us all up. Oh, it's nothing really, replied Mr. Funny modestly, and drove off. In his shoe. There he is, driving off in his shoe. Later, when Mr. Funny arrived home, he chuckled to himself. Well, he said, that's the end of another funny day. And he parked his shoe and went inside his teapot, and because he was thirsty, he made himself, there look, he's home now and very happy because he's had a really successful day. And he was feeling thirsty, and he made himself a nice, hot, I can't show it to you, a nice, hot cup of tea, because he lives in a teapot. Isn't that a nice story, Oscar? I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll make a start on Mr. Fussy. So, I don't know what that story is going to be about. What do you think, Moosey? Do you know anything about it? No, I don't know. I enjoyed Mr. Funny, and I'm going to enjoy Mr. Fussy too, he says. Mr. Fussy was fussy about everything. There's Mr. Fussy. I think it's going to be very tidy flowers. Absolutely everything had to be neat and tidy and in its proper place. Mr. Fussy spent all day and every day rearranging his furniture and making sure the flowers grew in a straight line in his garden. There they all are, in a straight line. And trying to find specks of dust where there couldn't possibly be specks of dust, because he spent all his time making sure there weren't any specks of dust. Silly Mr. Funny. One morning Mr. Fussy was having breakfast. He was very fussy about what he ate. He opened the marmalade pot. There he is, with his marmalade pot. he explained, "it's got bits in it." Well, of course, Oscar, it would have bits in it, bits of orange. And he spent the rest of the morning separating the bits from the marmalade, or if you prefer, the marmalade from the bits. Fussy old fusspot, people used to call him. So, all those bits in the jar he took out. Then Mr Fussy went out into his garden and spent the rest of the day straightening out all of the blades of grass on his lawn. Fussy old fusspot. I don't know how, it would take ages, wouldn't it, Oscar? What about our backyard? Can you imagine trying to straighten out all the grass there? That evening Mr Fussy was in his kitchen, ironing his shoelaces, when he heard a crash outside. "What's to do?" he murmured to himself, and hurried outside to investigate. There he is, opening his front door. Whoa. There, with a broken garden gate in one hand, an old battered suitcase in the other, and a sheepish grin on his face, stood an untidy person. Guess who this is, Oscar? Mr Clumsy. Oh, wow. He does look pretty awkward, doesn't he? "Whoops," he said, holding up the garden gate. "It came off in my hand." "Who," spluttered Mr Fussy, looking in horror at his garden gate, "are you?" "I'm Mr Clumsy," replied the untidy person, grinning, and he stepped forward to shake Mr Fussy's hand, but tripped over and fell on the lawn. Oh, silly Mr Fussy. "My grass," cried Mr Fussy. "Straight grass, you've bent it." That's silly, isn't it? And he got down on his hands and knees and started straightening the grass. "But who are you?" he asked over his shoulder, "and why are you here?" "I'm your cousin," replied Mr Clumsy, "your long-lost cousin from Australia. I've come to visit." So there, Mr Fussy and his long-lost cousin, Mr Clumsy. What's going to happen next, I wonder, Oscar? "Aren't you pleased to see me?" continued Mr Clumsy cheerfully, knocking over a flower or two as he got up, and picked up his suitcase, knocking over another flower or two or three. Mr Fussy, quite obviously, wasn't pleased to see him. "You'd better come in," he muttered. There they are, going into the house. "I say," remarked Mr Clumsy, looking through the front door of Mr Fussy's house, "I say, what a neat little place you've got here." And he stepped inside and tripped over his shoelaces. He often does. Knocked over a chair, dropped his suitcase, and fell in an untidy heap on the floor. There he is. That's Mr Clumsy going into the house. Mr Fussy's house. "Whoops," Mr Clumsy said. Mr Fussy shut his eyes, heaved a sigh, and groaned silently to himself. Later that evening, after Mr Fussy had cooked them a meal, and after Mr Clumsy had helped with the washing up 2 broken plates, they sat down to talk. Look, there's Mr Clumsy with a broken plate. Oh dear. Mr Fussy sat, as he always did, in a neat and tidy fashion. Mr Clumsy sat, as he always did, in a not so neat and tidy fashion. There it is, look. Oh, I think he's sitting over the arm of the chair. He looks very happy, though. "How long are you staying?" asked Mr Fussy. "Oh, I don't know," grinned Mr Clumsy. "A few days, a week, a year. I haven't decided." Wow. What do you think's going to happen next, then, Oscar? I think we're going to have to stop there as we're running out of time. And we'll finish that one next week. So, lots of love from Grandpa, me and Lucy, and from Granny and Auntie Anna, and lots of love to you all, Mummy and Daddy, and your little baby sister Annabelle. So I hope you have lots of fun and doing good work at school too in grade 2. And enjoy your guitar lessons. I think they're fabulous. And enjoy your skating too. See you soon. Bye. Bye.